You hear that? You guys are all being recorded in the cloud now. Okay, so let's begin, shall we? Thank you all for attending today's webinar. It's on, do I have to keep admitting all? I think okay, I'm gonna have to do some admin work here to make sure I keep admitting people that are joining late. So if I'm looking away, that's what I'm doing. But yeah, thank you all for joining today's webinar, presented to you by CleanBC. We got some great presenters today, and the topic is, can electric vehicles save your organizations money? All right, we got some echoes in here, so if I can just ask everyone to keep it on mute unless you're asking a question or speaking. So let's begin, shall we? Before we begin, there's going to be a survey. I'll send the link in the chat if you guys don't have that link already. There's going to be recording has started. So if you're showing your face, it's going to be recorded. If you speak, it's going to be recorded. And we will share that early next week along with the slides and all that stuff as per usual. And if you have any technical issues, we're all a year and a half or almost 2 years into this now, so I'm not expecting any, but you can give my my right-hand man, Shakar, here a call or an email, and hopefully he can sort you out with any issues. So that's before we begin. So let's rock and roll with the agenda. So I'm already 5 minutes late, but I'll do a really quick introduction and speak about the incentive programs that we got available. After that, I'm going to hand over the mic to Shayna, who's going to speak to the benefits of fleet electrification. I think everyone's going to be really interested in hearing what they have to say. They have a very interesting standpoint in the market. That's going to be about a 20-minute presentation. The speakers know I'm a stickler for time, so I'm going to keep you to your 20 minutes. And then we're going to hand it over to Charlotte, who will start at 2:30. Charlotte's with Geotab. She's going to be presenting on telematics data and how that and the benefits for EV electrification. If you guys don't know if you don't know Geotab, they're a telematics company. Lots of data, lots of insights, lots of good stuff coming for you guys there. And then after Charlotte's presentation, I'm going to hand it over to Bassam, who works with us here at CleanBC, in addition to some of the other work that he does for NRCan and UBC and a whole bunch of good folks in this sector. And he probably has already sent you guys a survey. So for those of you that have not done the survey, we're going to walk through that a little bit as well. And then we save 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. If we don't get to all your questions today, throw it in the chat or send us an email. Our contact information will be available. All right, so I got 4 minutes to run through the Go Electric Fleets program and CleanBC and who that is. So let's start. So my name is Patrick Brewer. For those of you guys don't know me, I think most of you do. I looked at the attendance list, saw a lot of familiar names there. I am the Zero Emission Vehicle Fleets Advisor for the CleanBC Go Electric Fleets. So just again, if I can ask people to go on mute for the time being. So what is the Go Electric Fleets program? It's one of the suite of programs that our province graciously offers and is using to promote the adoption of clean energy vehicles, zero emission vehicles in BC. So the Go Electric Fleets program is really focused on planning and charging infrastructure for fleets, especially light duty fleets. And the Fraser Basin Council is a delivery agent for the provincial government. That's why you're speaking to me and not a provincial representative. So we deliver that program. We also deliver the Fraser Basin Council, CleanBC, same thing. We also deliver the special use vehicle incentive program, the public charger program, we do the EV advising for the home and workplace program, and BC Hydro / Forest BC, whoever your utility is, they will actually send you the check and process that. Then there's also a point of sale rebate. I'm sure everyone's familiar with. If an individual or an organization were to go out and buy a Hyundai Kona, for example, you're going to get $3,000 from the provincial government towards that, right at point at sale. Beautiful thing. You don't have to do any applications. The dealership is dealing that for you. That program is managed by the New Car Dealership Association of BC, not CleanBC. But if you got questions, you can always ask us. There's also another program called the Commercial Vehicle Pilots Program. That one's really looking at like innovative pilot programs. Again, CleanBC doesn't operate that one. It's actually run by MNP, a big accounting firm. So if you have questions, those would be the people to ask, but come to us. I'd be happy to share a contact or point you in the right direction if you have any questions for that. So that's some of the programs under the CleanBC Go Electric umbrella. Then we also have, just as an honorable mention there at the bottom, the federal government, they have the ZEVIT program as well, adding funds to almost all of these categories as well. So either working together, integrated in one rebate check, or you have to apply for both separately with stacking, depends on the situation. So I got 2 minutes, really quick here. I'm going to run through the Go Electric Fleets program. What is the Go Electric Fleets program? It is a program with 4 categories. First 2 categories, planning. So before you buy an EV, before you install chargers, plan it out a little bit. Look ahead. You're going to have a whole fleet. You got to electrify it. It's going to be a lot of power at the end of the day. 10, 20 years from now, it's going to be a lot of power. Can your buildings handle it? We give you rebates to look into that. So if you want to hire a consultant to do a fleet assessment, either with telematics or without, doesn't matter to us. As long as you got the data, as long as you can do it, we'll support that effort. We also provide funding for infrastructure assessments. So if you go to an engineering company, a consultant, whatever, and you're looking at your buildings, you want to do a gap analysis. What do I have today? What do I need in the future? How do I fill that gap? Steps. Fleets program is for you. Moving on from the planning section, the last 2 categories are the calling in the trades and actually getting stuff done. So there's electrical modifications, anything that you're doing to modify your facility for the purpose of supporting electric vehicles or future electric vehicles is eligible. So if that's something you're looking to do, we should probably talk. And then the last rebate we have is for the actual charging stations. Typically you don't install, even though you can, rough in everything, make it ready, you don't actually install the charging station until the vehicle shows up, because it's, quite a simple, piece of kit you can just attach. It's also a higher cost item. I wouldn't buy it to have it sitting in the fence, against the fence, unused. Just buy it at the end when the vehicle shows up and you need it. We support non-networked level 2 charging, networked level 2 charging, and DC fast charging. So no matter what you're looking for in the charging space, generally we have a rebate program for you. So if any of that was interest, talk to me. You can reach out to me, Patrick. So fleets@pluginbc.ca. And as I promised Shayna, I'd be on time. I'm gonna flip it over to her. Can you just make sure that you have all the co-hosts and you're able to, I'll stop screen sharing so that you can start.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you hear me okay? Okay, now I need to try the technology. Share screen. There we go. Always a little bit of a switching cost between the platforms. Anyway, good afternoon. Great to be here. And again, the CleanBC team, thank you for convening this. It takes us meeting and talking about things like electrifying our fleets, because it's not as easy as snapping a finger. So it's great to come together, and looking forward to hearing what was found in the findings of the surveys. So again, Shayna Retter-Blaker, one of the co-founders with 7Gen. I believe on the line, I'm joined by a couple of colleagues. So somewhere is my colleague, Mark Bailey. He helps with our project finance models. So as and when we work with fleets, he helps draw up the total cost of ownership models. And I believe I'm also joined by a colleague out from Montreal, Frédéric Delarue, a little bit late in Montreal, but I think he's dialing in. He's got 20 plus years experience in the automotive and transportation sector, mostly in developing actually electric vehicles, cars, trucks, buses. And he helped Bassam a little bit on some of the questions in the questionnaire. So I'm going to actually aim to be faster than 20 minutes, Patrick. So I challenge you to give me like the 10-minute warning, because I can see your face, because it'd be really nice to have a chance for questions and dialogue. I'm not sure how you're all coming to this meeting and where you're at in your knowledge journey. So I was told to cast a picture of benefits of EVs and then just go through a little bit on costs and sort of how we're seeing the landscape. So here I go. You can see that slide okay. And I can't see how to get to present mode. So we're gonna go, is that okay, Patrick, or should I go to present mode?
If you want to go to present mode, I think that might just make it full screen, but either way, I think it works.
Oh, sorry. Coming in hot. Plateau. Play from start. There we go.
That looks great.
All right. Okay, that's better. So I mean, most of us that have taken time to fill out the survey are probably navigating some of the space. What's the benefit of a zero emission vehicle? And actually, Patrick, I sort of expected some of this might be in your preamble, so I just threw this slide together quick while you were talking. I don't need to read the slide out. You can all see there, and we pieces. Of course, there's a less emissions bit, but because of there being less moving parts, and of course the fuel being cheaper, there is still a cost for electricity, but it's not as costly as our increasing diesel and gasoline costs. They are quieter. And while there have been concerns historically, of course, because of the size and weight of batteries of the available payload, we're now getting to a place where there are options in the various class 3 to class 8 in proper truck categories. And of course, they're really fun to drive because they really take off fast. So just kind of lay of the land. I don't think we're debating anymore the merits or the validity of the impacts of climate change. It's very clear that we're in the middle of a massive transition. And one, I mean, people are likening to, very frankly, the transition from the horse to the combustion engine vehicle. It's not as simple as switching out a car. It's not as simple as picking your next sweet diesel truck. There are other variables that come to bear. That said, while we are not seeing a lot of zero emission vehicles in the commercial category just yet, a survey by the Rocky Mountain Institute says that in North America, 81% of fleets are actually starting to look at it. Down the right-hand side are a few quotes from various large organizations, from the president of the US to a few of the large multinationals. I think I see some of you are joining us from municipal fleets. Of course, many of our cities have committed to climate action targets in the last couple of years. What we have there are goals. What we don't yet have is the how we're going to get there. Incentive programs like what CleanBC gratefully facilitate are helping with those first steps, but we've got a lot of work to do. And effectively, the bulk of that change will be in the next decade. Yeah, and building a whole new infrastructure does not come cheap. So I've got some numbers in the slide. Not only are we individually, as those that are operating fleets, going to need to invest, but really at the systems level, there's a lot of change. It's not going to be the ease of gas stations on the corner of most major thoroughfares. There is charging infrastructure to be installed. So that all sounds really daunting. Let's just try and simplify it a little bit. Where do we start? So indeed, some fleet managers aren't quite there yet. Some are trying things and piloting new vehicles and technology. Many feel it is still too expensive or still too complicated, or frankly, it's too early. There are not options yet available. But I hope in both mine and Charlotte's presentations today, you'll see and hear some of the categories where there are options today. And I hope what I share with you now, depicts a path where if you're not sitting on a lot of, CapEx, you've done very well over the pandemic. If you're in a different boat, there are ways to finance this today that probably will look quite good if you look at over the operation of the asset. So depending on a 5 to 8 year timeline. So I want to myth bust those three things. So some of the fleets that are ready today, I mean, we're not yet in the space of our long haul heavy duty options, but where we are and where good options exist are where we've got return to base operations, where there is that opportunity for overnight charging. Why? If we can get a longer, 6 to 8 hour period, you can go for a smaller charging capacity, which is a lot cheaper from an infrastructure perspective than the very quick DC fast chargers, or DCFCs, as you'll hear them referred to, that allow a faster charge that is more familiar to us in our operations to what it takes to pop gas in your tank. So just to keep the costs at a reasonable level, also to have certainty with your operations, it's really great to look at, we work with customers to go, which of your customer routes would be the best to try a zero emission vehicle with? I list on the right some of the categories where we are currently supporting fleets to get vehicles. As you see there at the bottom, we're all waiting for those pickup trucks. And we're told they'll be hitting the roads late next year. I think all of us know about some of the supply chain challenges that exist though. Sorry, I'm driving all over the place there. From a total cost of ownership perspective, I mean, this always comes down to your operations, your routes, your payloads. So it's very hard to paint this simple, here's the total cost of ownership for a vehicle in X category. But to give you an example of how things compare in a last mile delivery fleet, I believe this was with the class 6, but Mark would have to clarify for me. You can see there on the screen how it stocks up. So yes, the cost of the vehicle can be double to even more than the equivalent internal combustion engine vehicle. Charging infrastructure has its costs, but as you can see, the expenditure on maintenance and also your fuel is significantly less. So therefore, in this particular example, we depict it over a 6-year period. You can see some of the savings that are received, and then of course, the very significant CO2 emission reduction. We're not doing a deep dive on vehicle availability, but I do suggest that maybe that's a follow-up with the plug-in-BC team. I'm interested to hear what you heard back in the survey, and maybe there's a vehicle category we could do a deep dive on, and then really, hear what the options are in that space, pros and cons, et cetera. That's a really useful discussion. But you can see, I mean, there are vehicles on the roads today. Those are the ones in the currently available square there. There are a number of providers that are offering conversions. For those of you that are based here in the Lower Mainland, you may have seen some of the Purolator Motive trucks, which are based out of their depot right by the airport. There's 5 of them driving around, and they're delightful. They're quiet and they're not stinky, and they get fan mail posted on their dashboard when they're parked and they're around downtown, says the driver. So the ones on the right, they're in production. GM, of course, has made big announcements about what they're producing here in Ontario. Yeah, the issue with all of this, and I have to say, just to come back, Patrick, you talked about, buy your vehicle first and get your charging later. What I would say is you need to get your purchase orders in sooner rather than later. We are seeing or being told from manufacturers, you'll have a vehicle in 4 to 5 months. Very often, it's more like 12. And on the charging infrastructure space, yes, there are some that can deliver, particularly in the lighter chargers, in a few weeks, but most are saying lead times of anything from 12 to 20 to 26 weeks. So that segues to this last slide that I just pulled together. Even if you think and feel that in your particular application, there is not an electric vehicle available yet, I would still recommend start thinking about it, start looking at your current operations and go, okay, which of these routes might become a candidate in the next 2 to 3 years? Because to the timelines I just spoke about, you're really wanting to plan 12 to 18 months out. What we are seeing with some of 7Gen's clients is that they are having their customers, so the example is IKEA Canada, telling them that they are going to start cutting contracts with fleets that cannot demonstrate their ability to do the business with a zero emission vehicle by 2025. So there's others that say they are considering this space. I've spoken with folks at Canadian Tire, for example. Certainly we know Amazon has put that out there. And of course, anybody that is supporting a government business, these are things that will come. So you don't want to come up for contract review and tender, find out that this is a criteria for you to win that business and not have started your planning. As I say there on the slide, there's lots to consider, electrical capacity of your site, what are the maximum power needs, not going to be just for that first truck, but for, I don't know, how many are you going to get into in the next 5 to 10 years? And then of course, how are you going to optimize your charging? 7Gen, so we're a BC-based business, a startup with our offices here in North Van. You can see some of the activity behind me. We're trying to address that issue of there being so many upfront costs that make investing in zero-emission vehicles seem challenging. So on the left-hand side, if you're going to purchase all of this infrastructure outright. You're just going to take care of it yourself. You're going to need to build in-house expertise in areas you may or may not have had historical operations in. I mean, maybe you've had some electrical tractors operating inside a warehouse or what have you, so you might have some expertise, but it does, while we say it's easier to maintain an electric vehicle, there's still technical requirements that it's great to have expertise in. Of course, you got to come up with a lot of cash. You'll be fully responsible for maintenance and repair, which is not a very comfortable place to be when it's the first time operating. And of course, it's a one-time opportunity. If you can work with someone that is willing to switch out vehicles or work with you in more of a partnership, then you have more of an opportunity to trial technologies. And if they're not working, find what is right for you. So what do? We effectively lease vehicles and charging infrastructure to clients, thereby having sort of the EV expertise in our team or with those that we work with. Rather than a client having to come up with all of the money up front, we amortize the costs of that vehicle and that charging infrastructure over the lifetime of the asset. So we try and match that up with the warranty of the battery, for example. And therefore, for most of our clients, the monthly cost that they are paying for their new vehicle looks very similar to their total expenditure on a current equivalent diesel vehicle and fuel. We also then take care of an O&M plan and then support as the fleet goes through the journey. So it's just, and as Patrick was saying, we have an interesting lens on the industry. This is just our way of solving for some of that complexity and trying to help fleets accelerate this transition. I talked about the steps earlier. I realized I missed that slide. That's not helpful. Here's the steps we need to do. That's super important. There's a long phase of feasibility. What actually works for your operations, your weight, your routes, your temperature. And you don't want to rush that. Once some technical decisions have been identified, some technical choices have been identified, then there's the charger and infrastructure design and figuring out how to finance all of that. As yet, the classic infrastructure investors still have questions around residual values of these vehicles. So it's not as cut and dry as going to your local Penske dealer and getting into your next lease. It requires a little more work. Of course, then permitting and procurement of the actual charging infrastructure, getting the vehicle to arrive, et cetera, making sure you've done the construction to get your chargers installed, tested, and properly working before you're ready to be relying on a vehicle hitting the road 7 days a week and operationalizing it all. I can't see you anymore, Patrick, so I don't know how I am on time. But yeah, just the way we help, and there's so many new entrants into this space on the charge point operator side and also on the OEM side, trying to help fleets in this transition. What we as a business are trying to do is just build those little pieces that help communicate between the different parts of the system. So how do you map what your total cost of ownership is going to be, not just some average one? How do we go through an infrastructure design with you that, again, works in your facilities? How is the asset going to be managed and maintained virtually? So on and so forth. I will not talk about vehicle telematics and steal any of Charlotte's thunder. And I just wanted to conclude, today is sort of a what are the options and how can you get incentives? That's what Patrick was talking about. But before you can go to CleanBC and say, this is the vehicle I want, there is planning to take place. And that really starts with the needs analysis for you and that preliminary study on what your needs will be. And then drafting up an offering of how you could, based on your current needs, begin that journey to finally place a purchase order and knock on Patrick's door. Yeah, if you want to get in touch with myself or Mark or have a one-on-one with Fred about specific vehicle types, feel free to fill out the form on our website. How do I stop sharing?
All right. Thank you very much, Hannah. But I think you're gonna get a lot of questions. I think we'll probably save those for the end, seeing how 3 minutes is like an awkward amount of time. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Charlotte. Charlotte, are you able to? I'll coach you through the screen sharing. Oh, let me turn. I'm speaking. I should turn my camera back on. So if you want to share your screen, oh, that looks perfect.
I think I'm
you got it.
Sharing. Okay.
She's done this before. All right, Charlotte, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, excellent. Well, Sheena painted an excellent overview of fleet electrification and some of the challenges and opportunities there. I'm only going to be spending a few minutes here, but yeah, excited to be part of this conversation. What I wanted to do was share some insights around what we've learned on electrification potential for fleets. And just to give you a bit of an idea of where I'm coming from for this is Geotab, we're a telematics provider. And so we are one of the largest global telematics providers. So we have over 2.5 million vehicles subscribed on our platform. And a lot of our focus today is using data to help inform or take out the guesswork of where electrification will work for individual fleets. And so we have a tool that kind of runs through total cost of ownership and suitability analysis for individual fleet applications. But what I want to do is share some of the more macro insights that we've learned because we have such a breadth of data. And that's something that my role with Geotab is around EV and thought leadership and what can we learn from our insights to help inform the industry at large. So with that, I'll re-emphasize one of Sheena's points, which is fleets are not homogeneous. So you're going to have very, very different vehicle needs, vehicle classes across different fleets and industries, but also within a fleet. So for any fleet manager who's approaching a fleet electrification strategy, they have to enter that strategy that's going to be unique to that particular fleet's needs and use. There's three kind of case studies or examples I want to provide here. The first one is on light duty vehicles. And I think when we talk about fleets, often everyone's mind quickly goes to medium heavy duty vehicles. And I know a lot of you here today do have vehicles in those class categories, but I'm sure some of you also have light duty vehicles in your fleets as well. So what I want to share is an analysis that we did on our North American fleet vehicles, which was what we call a macro EV suitability assessment. And what we did is analyzed the duty cycle of almost 180,000 light duty passenger vehicles. So this is everything from small sedans to light passenger vans. And we looked at their daily usage and their fuel consumption and their climate that they're driving in. And we did an analysis to say, of the electric vehicles that are available today, which ones are range capable and then also economical to switch based on these 180,000 individual duty cycles. And so this was a big Google query project for anyone familiar with big data and Google query. And what we discovered was for range capability, almost 50% of duty cycles today for sedans and light duty, anything below electric pickups are range capable. And of those, without incentives, 15% of them would save the fleet money today. Applying an incentive to that, so this was North American worldwide, so it depends on the jurisdiction on whether or not there are government incentives for the upfront cost of the vehicles. But applying a $5,000 incentive to this, that increases the economic and range capable portion of the light duty fleets to 32%. So what this tells us is there is a lot of untapped opportunity and actually money that's being left on the table today for fleets to go electric without having to wait for new makes and models, without having to wait for longer range vehicle options or lower cost vehicle options. But the important piece to this is there's going to be low hanging fruit, so to speak. And it really depends on that duty cycle. So understanding each individual vehicle, their duty cycle, what their daily needs are, and doing an analysis on that can help fleets start with the kind of the quick wins and get them in the game for electrification. And that helps fleets be prepared for as more vehicle options come to market and there's an opportunity to expand their fleet. They've already started that transition. So the second case study I wanted to share was a case study that we did with Enterprise Fleet Management. So we did an EV suitability assessment for their lease vehicles, and that was over 90,000 of their vehicles. Again, it was light duty, but it included this time pickup trucks. And Shayna made a great comment about us all waiting for the electric pickups. So very similar to our macro analysis of from the other study, we found that 13% of their vehicles today could go electric with no problem and actually save money. The challenge is Enterprise Fleet Management has a lot of pickups in their operations, and so essentially 0% of those came out as suitable because today they can't actually purchase an electric pickup, but we know they are coming. So based on the specs that the automakers have shared, and based on we put a conservative estimate on what the range capability would be. So we didn't just blindly use what they're saying in terms of efficiency and battery capacity, but we redid the analysis with those assumptions in place and found that 45% of their entire light duty fleet, including pickups, could go electric and save the fleet money. And there's an opportunity for $167 million to be saved if they did that. So those are just some examples of how data can help inform what the total cost of ownership is and where the opportunity is for electric. That's on the light duty side. I do want to touch on the medium and heavy duty electrification opportunity. So we haven't done the same kind of comprehensive EV suitability assessment with medium and heavy duty trucks yet. There are some additional complexities with medium heavy duty, which I'll just touch on briefly here, but we have done some early analysis on from class 3 to class 8 duty cycles. And oftentimes the assumption is, well, for the most part, these vehicles they're too high utilization and they're not going to be range capable for the EVs that are coming to market. And what we found is actually a vast majority of these vehicles do have daily driving distances that are under 300 kilometers, which is well within the range of most of the vehicles that are available today and have been slotted to come out in the next year. And that goes across all classes too. So even with heavy duty, when we think of class 8, we think of long haul. Well, there's a lot of class 8 vehicles and trucks that actually have shorter range needs. Now, the additional considerations for determining for medium heavy duty whether or not there's a suitable EV option for them includes payload, which has a very significant impact on the range capability of these vehicles. So understanding the relationship between payload and efficiency and therefore range is going to be really important to determine range capability for your fleet. And the other one is whether or not the vehicle comes back to the same location. So it's one thing to say, well, this vehicle only drives 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers each day, but if it's stopping at a different location every night, then there's going to be additional challenges in getting the appropriate charging infrastructure in place. So taking telematics data and looking at the actual duty cycle and use case and where those vehicles are dwelling and for how long will help inform not only a vehicle procurement strategy, but also a charging infrastructure strategy to both understand where the charging infrastructure needs are going to be, but also to right size that charging infrastructure so you're not paying more for what your actual needs are. And I think I'm out of time here, but yeah, the kind of underscore of all of this is don't assume. Use your fleet vehicles and your telematics data can tell you, and you can leverage that information to tell you where to start and how to plan. And doing an electrification strategy for both today, but also thinking about long-term is going to be much more comprehensive if you take into your actual vehicle data and needs. So with that, I will stop sharing and pass it back to Patrick.
Thank you, Charlotte. I was going to let you run on for as long as you needed to, by the way. All right. So let me hand it over to Bassam.
Thank you, Patrick. Hopefully you can see my screen.
I can, yeah. So right now, I think you're still in your.
Okay. We're
There
good
we
now?
go. Yeah, I think we're in your presenter mode.
Perfect. Tough act to follow after Shayna and Charlotte. So thank you for that. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bassam Javed. I'm here to talk to you about a future program that could help small and medium organizations to procure EVs at a discounted price. This project is a partnership of Fraser Basin Council, CleanBC, UBC, and Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions, as well Shayna from 7Gen and Charlotte from Geotab have provided some really good feedback for this particular project. I mean, what's the value proposition? I've just got a couple of slides. It's a fairly short presentation. The value proposition really is, I mean, if we look at the whole stock of fleet vehicles in BC, the majority of fleet vehicles are actually not operated by large organizations. So those ones with like 50 or say 50 or more vehicles. In fact, it's actually smaller organizations, the ones with say 1 or 2 or 10 vehicles, that altogether, they actually make up the largest fraction of the stock of fleet vehicles in the entire province of BC. So on aggregate, all of those vehicles they're actually the biggest chunk. But the challenge comes when you have a smaller, medium-sized organization, such as many of you, those of you that are on the line today, when they start looking at potentially getting an EV, they run into a twofold challenge. I mean, first, individually, collectively, yes, it's a large fraction, but individually, I mean, you're 1 or 2 or 10. And so you don't necessarily have the market power to be able to come to the table and negotiate a better price. I mean, some of the early data that I can share with you is that I've seen a lot of organizations have been saying that they're procuring through a dealership. So I mean, if you're 1 or 2 or 10 vehicles, then you might not necessarily be able to get a good price on an EV, let alone availability, all of those sorts of things. And then the other challenge is, I mean, let's face it, you're an organization that has other things to do, right? I mean, fleet management might be a secondary concern for you on your day-to-day decision making in your business or municipality, or whatever your organization may be. So I mean, the solution really that we're trying to get at here in this project is that to potentially explore a program that could, number one, it could help organizations to find an EV that fits their needs, to actually do some of the suitability and find what actually fits your needs, you know, based on your operation. And then number two, the real outcome is actually be able to get those EVs and get them at a discounted price. So be able to put those 1s and those 2s and those 10s together and to make dozens or hundreds or even more, and to actually have that market power to be able to get EVs at a good price for your organizations. So I mean, how do we get to that outcome? It's a lofty goal, obviously. And of course, CleanBC, I mean, Patrick spoke right at the beginning of a lot of programs that CleanBC offers through the CleanBC Go Electric Fleet program. This is sort of a future program that we're looking at. I mean, how do we actually get to that outcome? And this is the survey that many of you have actually, thank you to those that have filled it out. We actually want to get a sense of what does that demand actually look like, right? I mean, so this short survey, I mean, it's about 10 or 15 minutes, depending on how many types of vehicles you have. But really, it's sort of getting at 3 broad questions, right? What does your operation look like? How do you use your vehicles? And what are the barriers that are in your organization that still need to be addressed in order to go electric, so to speak? So, I mean, that's really it for me. I mean, I don't think I need to do a live demonstration of the survey. I thought I might do that, but I think that many of you filled it out. Thank you for that. And I see on my data analytics that many of you actually opened it up and partially filled it out. A nice thing about the survey is that, you know, if you've got 5 minutes today and 5 minutes tomorrow, it'll say where you left off. So it's something that you can fill out even in between your coffee breaks or something of that sort. So I really do encourage you to fill out the survey. I think Shikar had shared the link in the chat, but we'll definitely share that with you along with perhaps the presentation decks that Shane and Charlotte had shared. So I do encourage you to fill the survey out. In a future webinar, I'd be happy to share some of the results of that survey. And sort of some of the broad insights that I've already gotten quite a few really good insights, but once we have a more holistic picture of what's going on out there, I'd be happy to share that and perhaps do, as Shayna suggested, maybe a deeper dive into a specific vehicle category, or if there's a certain organization type or certain sector that people are operating in, we could get into some of those details, the nuts and bolts of it. So I'll leave it at that for for my little plug for the Plug-in BC survey, pun intended. But if you do need to reach out, you can reach out to the team at fleets@pluginbc.ca, and then you can also reach out to me individually at basam.javad@ubc.ca, and happy to hear any feedback. Thank you. Back to Patrick for the Q&A.
Sam does have a Fraser Basin email as well, but he doesn't check it, so don't send it to that one.
Don't use it.
I guess two ways of asking questions here. You can either throw them in the chat and I'll read them out and assign them to someone to answer, or you could, if you're brave enough, you could unmute yourself and just ask your question. So I'm told I have to wait seven long seconds to wait for questions to come in, and maybe even longer now that people need to type them out, and it's all being recorded. So let me waffle on a little bit here while people put their thoughts together to ask a question.
Hello there.
Hello, Harley.
Thanks for putting this together, really informative. I'm the general manager for Greenworks Commercial. So we do the outdoor power equipment, battery powered equipment. And we are part of your program, and our products are in the specialty use. A couple of questions that come up. Well, one primarily is people are looking to purchase in the program and are expecting the rebate. They often wonder if you've run out of cash in the fiscal year, the calendar year. And so they're not sure if they should make the purchase this year or next year. Is there an easy way to figure out if the funding is still there for that? For us, it's a $2,000 or $5,000 rebate based on our battery platform. I'll just open it up for you.
Yeah, let me hand that over to the SUVI expert, Shakar.
Thanks, Patrick. So, Harley, to answer your question. Sorry about that. We do have funding available right now, and it doesn't really matter whether you make the application now or late in the next quarter. It's a post-purchase incentive program, so you have 90 days from the day you purchase the vehicle to make the application and get the rebate. So it totally depends on that. And we just request from the OEM that if you make a change to the vehicle model, just make a request to us, and so that we could update it on our website regularly. I don't know if this answers your question.
Yes, partially it does. Most often right now it's cities and municipalities that are buying into this. And so their budget cycle can be long. So sometimes it'll take 6 months for them to get to the budget point where they can buy something. And so they never know what it's going to look like if the piggy bank is going to run out by that point or what. And with the 90 days, it may not be enough time to capture, the rebate. So I wasn't sure if they could go into a website and see if there's funds available or not.
So there's $31 million available with us. So it shouldn't be a problem. And the program is running for March 2023 right now, subject to extension. I'm pretty sure it's going to extend for another couple of years because the money is still there. It's sitting. We want more and more applicants to take the advantage of this program. So we are requesting people to reach out to us if they have any problem with the application or any kind of support that we could provide to speed up the process.
Sure. Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one thing on that for you, Harley. So that's a real thing we're also dealing with our fleets, when especially this delivery time is an ever-changing piece. We don't actually know what day the vehicle is going to arrive, and therefore what day can we apply for that SUVI. So it's a real risk that we are navigating by going to the financing partners and saying, please finance the total amount of the vehicle. God forbid there's some reason we don't get that rebate. It's amortized into the whole price of the vehicle. Now, Plug-in BC very gratefully has said we can request a letter, like an advance letter. We'd like to say we're ordering 10 vehicles. Can you give us written, confirmation that the money sits somewhere? And we use that piece of paper to go to the bank to say, we're going to turn around and give that money back to you. So actually, we're only going to borrow this amount, but it's a way of spreading the risks across the system because it's really hard to have it all line up perfectly.
I completely understand that. And so for the medium and heavy duty vehicles, we do know that there's a delay in deliveries, usually up to 12 months, like we have seen that cases. So there's a provision now to request to reserve the funding, but we need a minimum 10% payment proof to attach with the application. And just make the application request for the fund reserving. And later on, when you get the vehicle delivered, you submit the rest of the documentation, the proof of the payment, and then we will release the check for you. Right now, we do not have a pre-approval process, but we are looking into it. It's a little complicated, so I'm talking with the province about it, and hopefully we will have a solution for that. But right now, just for the medium and heavy duty, there is a provision to request to reserve funding with a minimum 10% payment required.
Thanks very much. It really helps. I only have one final question, and it's the end of life cycle. And we often get asked, what's happening with these batteries, and we're supposed to, we want this program to be all encompassing, globally friendly. And are these batteries, when they are taken into recycling, do they get dumped, or is something actually happening? Can they be refurbished? And I'm not sure if this is the forum for that, but it is something that I'm really curious about. And I'm sure one of you knows something about that. I'd be curious what your answers are.
May I? I can provide some insight about that. Actually, it's a great question, and I recently spoke to a colleague of mine that moved to Life Cycle. Life Cycle is a very famous organization doing recycling for lithium battery, and I really wanted to the same, knowing what was the percentage of recycling they could achieve, and are we really recycling and getting material back from the batteries? And the answer was quite surprising. It's up to 95 to 99, and on some material 100% is gotten back from with the modern processes of recycling. It has nothing to do with the recycling processes that we had 10 years ago, on smartphones or laptop battery packs, where you would basically burn the batteries and get back what you could. Here we're speaking of hydrometallurgical processes that reach very high levels, as I said, 95 to 100% of depending on the type of material. Of course, for that you need to make sure that the battery is collected by the dealership and brought to the recycling, and that's the job of the dealers to do that. So, but yeah, the technology is definitely there.
Yeah, thank you. We've had some experience with, we've been taking ours to Richmond, the recycling, and they cringe when they see us show up, because of course our batteries, a lot of them they're portable, they're small, and yeah, they're the last people we want to see right now. And I'm not sure, they're just not quite set up yet for lithium, but yeah, it seems to be a bit of a gray area for some of them at the moment. So. But anyway, I'm really happy to hear they are extracting. I know it's labor intensive.
Yeah, it requires an it requires obviously some process to be implemented, either for the collection of the batteries themselves, and then for the treatment. Indeed, they have to be disassembled, and then the modules need to be treated by recycling companies. Things are being put in place. Actually with the increasing volumes in electric cars and electric trucks, things are being put in place. But yeah, once again, the technology is there.
All right, we have another question. Daniel, you want to unmute yourself and go ahead?
I wanted only to go further with Frédéric. The recycling is already it's almost in place. In Montreal, we have a great organization, a startup called Leasing Recycling. The pilot plant is running right now. The recycle EV batteries at 95%. It's a hydrometallurgic process, and it's working. There will be no concern about it, there's benefits to it also. There's great economical benefits to it. So you should not have any concern about it. It's already being put in place. The recycling ecosystem of this, I would say that we have also a great second life ecosystem that is already put it into place. Even the batteries that are still usable and the vehicle itself is not usable, the battery will never get into garbage. Should not have any concern about it.
Thanks for that, Daniel. Looks like we have one more question. Jonathan, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Two questions, if we can fit them in. One is if you could send a link or where I'd find more information on the facility assessment subsidy program for looking at our public works building and seeing what it would take to bring the required power in there to set up charging stations. Second question is if the fleet management providers if they're managing any fleets which would consist of refuse trucks as well, or if there's more information in general on electrified refuse trucks, garbage trucks. Thank you.
All right, so so two-part question. My colleague Shakar is going to throw that link in the chat there, so you can click the link for the Go Electric Fleets program where you can do the fleet assessments. So the second part of your question was with regards to refuse vehicles. So this is something I get asked a lot lately. We're seeing a couple of refuse vehicles out there on the road already doing deliveries. I think they're doing some, or not deliveries, I guess pickups. Mac has a electric refuse vehicle they're using in New York. Before that, they also had a hybrid vehicle. We're seeing, I think there's a contractor for the city of Seattle has an electric refuse vehicle. I believe the city of Vancouver has one on order, or maybe perhaps even gotten delivery of it, but maybe not en route yet because I haven't seen it. And I know some other municipalities are also looking into electric refuse vehicles. So if you want some contacts, I've definitely had these conversations. I can share a little bit of a working group on who's done it before and maybe some lessons learned on electric refuse vehicles. Do you have any particular concerns?
I haven't given enough thought to fully articulate my concerns. Really at the starting point of entertaining the idea, and any information you could provide, links, etc., would be helpful. And the other side of it too, there was some discussion about sort of third-party fleet management, and I was wondering if that fleet management included municipal vehicles such as refuse trucks.
Yeah, so the fleets program is primarily a light duty program. So it is focused on the light duty fleet, but that's essentially just your ticket into the program. If you have a light duty fleet, which I'm sure, if you got refuse vehicles, you probably do have an F-150 or some sort of light duty vehicle in your fleet, then you're eligible to do the fleet program, and you can definitely look into the scope of your refuse vehicles, and they can do those assessments to see if those vehicles make sense for you. Just as a conversation starter, the ones I've seen out there, Lion has one, BYD has a refuse vehicle, and a Mac has a refuse vehicle. If anyone else knows of another one that I didn't list, feel free to pitch in, chirp in, or write it in the chat. So yeah, sorry, there was a second part to your question as well, right?
No, I think you've covered it. Thanks, Patrick.
Okay. Thanks, Jonathan. All right, I'm gonna lower Jonathan's hand, and if anyone else wants to ask their questions, you've got time for one more question, and then I'm wrapping it up. So.
If I may, in the meantime, if there is no question, I wanted to highlight that at 7Gen, there is a plan to propose refuse trucks, electric refuse trucks. I don't know if Shaina, you want to speak more about that, but there is definitely an offer. We're working with all the different providers. You mentioned them, Patrick, Peterbilt, BYD, Lyon, Mac, and so there is a big plan to fund the deployment of refuse trucks in Canada. I don't know if you want to add anything, Shaina.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so for especially those of you in the municipal space, you may have been watching some of the investments in zero emission public transportation. Much of that in the public sector has been funded or partially supported by the Canada Infrastructure Bank. They effectively are offering very patient, like long-term 30-year financing options at low to 0% interest. We have been working and speaking with them since the beginning of this year on developing the same for waste hauling vehicles. So we are currently at the moment in time of the proposal going to the board of the CIB. And in order for it to become available, we need to provide evidence to them of interest in the market to actually deploy zero emission waste vehicles. So I'm just putting in the chat right now, we through partners like Recycle BC and through E3 Fleets, and soon I hope also through the BC Waste Management Association, we're currently sharing this survey. Very quick, like less than 2 minutes, like how big's your fleet? When might you refresh it? Would you consider EVs? We're just needing to present a sense of the Canadian market and interest in taking up such a financing facility, which makes it much more attractive and a lot easier to get into these 400,000 and more expensive vehicles.
Thanks for that, Shane. I'll be sure to fill out the survey.
All right, and we are at 3 o'clock. I always like to finish my meetings on time. So have a great day, everyone. Ciao.